hear you. Where's my shirt? There's my shirt. Hello. Nice to see you, folks. Glad to have your company. I'm all by myself in the virtuality today, not completely by myself. My husband's right there. And he'll probably walk past me at some point, but Mom is not joining us today. So I'm awfully glad to see you all. Mom is not with us because she had a hip replacement 10 days ago and she's doing really, really well, but she is not supposed to be sitting upright, really. And so she can't sit at her computer for any length of time. And I guess she didn't feel like just lounging on the couch with the camera pointed at her. I don't know why not. I'm all fuzzy. Let me see if I can unfuzz. Help? No, let me try this. That's better. Yes, I will pass on your good wishes, and she's doing really well. She just, it takes time, of course. Hips don't just spontaneously heal once they've been whacked out of your body and replaced with bionic joints. So, because Mom is not here, that means we have no scarf report. So I'm kind of at a loss as to how to start this. My drill is, do the scarf report. So, but I do have a show and tell in lieu of scarf. I don't have a scarf, but I have pictures and a video, in fact, of samples that I was weaving for another purpose, but with the secret ulterior motive of figuring out whether or not the cloth would work well for a scarf or shawl. And success, it does. Hooray. So I guess I'll just launch right into that. So the backstory is that I am part of, in fact, running a study group for the Seattle Weavers Guild on overshot. And we're picking different overshot topics and to discuss. And occasionally we do samples based on those topics. And back at the end of last year, we chose overshot patterned double weave, also known as complementary plain weave, which is not overshot, but it is double weave that you can weave on 4 shafts that has the same motifs as overshot, hence overshot patterned double weave. Doesn't have to have overshot motifs, but it can. And the advantage of taking an overshot draft and turning it into overshot patterned double weave is that it doesn't have any floats, because it's two interleaved layers of plain weave. So there are no floats longer than one warp or one weft thread. But there's a whole ton of interlacement because double weave, and the layer exchange is happening constantly. So the fabrics are not generally very supple. So what my goal was partly to weave samples for this exchange, but also to see if I could produce a double weave cloth pattern, like overshot, that had enough drape and felt nice enough to be a wearable thing. And spoiler, that's it. That's the word I want. Spoiler alert, it worked. So let me show you. Let me get to the right tab first, rather than spoiling my other show and tell. Here we go. So this is the fabric that I wove. And this is after wet finishing. Most of the pictures that I took, the colors are not very true. Cameras have a hard time with purples, at least my phone does, and especially in the lighting. So I'm starting with this one because I think it shows the drape and it shows the colors pretty well. Whereas some of the other ones, like, oh, come on. Aren't my arrow keys? Oh, that's still pretty good. But that's what most of them look like, and those are really not the colors. So this is the blooming leaf from the corner of Lee's Surrender, which is, you know, just a standard blooming leaf. You could find the same blooming leaf or a very similar one in all kinds of places. But I turned all of Lee's Surrender into overshot pattern double weave, but it was 11 billion warp ends, and I did not want to weave all of that. So we were supposed to make like 6-inch samples, something that would fit in a plastic sleeve protector. So I just took that little leaf in the corner with a little bit of the border around it. And as you can see, I did some fun colors in the warp, which is partly to redeem myself, because the last time we had a sample exchange, I chose really ugly colors. And nobody called me out on it, but I still have felt kind of guilty about it. And then this shows you, I hope this shows you, oh, look, sound, or I guess listen sound, how much drape there is in the fabric, in spite of the fact that it's double weave, 2 layers. And I think I've got a couple other, yeah, this one also. I just couldn't stop playing with it because it was so soft and it felt so yummy. So it was very hard for me to cut it up into little 7-inch squares. But I did. I was a good girl. And I don't know what I did with my 7-inch square. So I'm glad I'm getting one of them back from the sample exchange. It's somewhere in the house. Well, anyway, doesn't matter. I don't know where it is. Fortunately, I still have a lot of warp left on the loom. I'm not quite sure why I felt I needed to put 6 yards on, but I did. So I have lots left, which means I should be able to weave like a shawl on it. It's not really the arrangement I would have chosen for a shawl, because as you can see, I put a solid-ish stripe up the center so that I could cut the samples apart. So I was weaving 2 samples at a time. It's faster. So it's kind of an odd, kind of an odd looking shawl, but it will feel delicious. Anything else in this photo album worth sharing with you? I kept taking videos of, those are all my measurements. Oh, I was very pleased with the set on the loom. This is 16-2 bamboo set at 44 ends per inch, so 22 ends per layer, 4 per dent in my 11 dent reed, which is my favorite reed. Yeah. Oh, this, I don't know if this video actually shows it or not, but overshot pattern double. Yeah, there. See, it's like a little pocket. You can make little pockets if you want. So you can make a hem and turn the two ends inside and sew along the edge so that there's no fringe. It's pretty cool. Yeah, I was trying to show the pocket. Not very easy. Anyhow, that is my scarf report, so to speak. I see nothing in the chat and I see no questions in the Q&A. So I guess that means at least that you could all see and hear what I was saying, and nobody was like screaming because the share wasn't working. So that brings us to the Q&A portion of the office hours, which is what the whole point of the office hours is, after all, your Q's and my A's, such as they are. So I hope you've got some. I have a little bit of other news and something in lieu of a book report, but I'd rather start with questions than just talk at you forever and ever. Ann Stouffer asks, did I say 16.2 Bambi? I didn't. There were no fawns or deer involved in the weaving of the fabric. 16.2 bamboo. But yes, I did say bamboo, but not the bamboo with the U. That's the trademark name that I don't know who makes it. Silk City sells it. I don't know if they make it or what. It's 16.2 100% bamboo fiber that comes from Brossard. I don't know if you can get it from other places or not. Holly asks, can you do the pocket thingy in Echo Weave? I would say that you could do the pocket thingy on any threading that supports 2 layers of plain weave, or 2 layers of fabric, which is, I realize, sort of a tautology. I don't know the answer to that. I'd have to think about it. I mean, if the threading always alternates odd and even, that's not a requirement, but I think it may be well, it would have to alternate odd and even and be distributed across 4 shafts, because 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 won't let you do any pockets. So if it's distributed, I don't know, but it's an interesting question, and now I want to investigate. Lisa asks, what is the next class I will teach and when is it? Well, Lisa, the next class I will teach, I guess technically, would be Drafting 101, I think is the first one on the docket, because Tien and I are still working busily away, in fact, more busily than ever, working away on the Hand Weaving Academy. The website is in development. We've got an absolutely amazing team of developers now. We had a different team of developers that were less amazing working on it at first, but we finally decided that you get what you pay for, and found some better, more expensive people. And they are doing an amazing job on setting up the website. And Tien and I are working madly on creating content, and I'm also working on another super exciting project for the website that I might let some cats out of some bags about if people were interested. And so we hope to go into alpha testing maybe in June, beta in July, I think the schedule might be August. And we're only going to let in a handful of beta testers, just a few, to test out the system, make sure everything works, make sure that that the website just works the way it's supposed to. And you guys, my patrons, I keep telling Tien, my patrons are on that list. So any of you who want to be beta testers, assuming, I mean, if every one of you does, I don't know if there's room for all of it, but if a few of you want to be beta testers, you will have the opportunity. And then the plan at this point is to go live for some folks in September, and then let in a few more folks in October, and just incrementally, kind of just to make sure that we don't have so many people join at once that we can't keep up. We can figure out what our capacity is. And the Academy is, among other things, a teaching site. So I will have classes on that site. So those classes they'll be visible to the beta testers when the beta testing happens. But for reals, first students that aren't testing will be able to start on those classes in September and October. And we'll have some classes that come out every month. Forever and ever. Amen. Is the goal. We shall see. And because we need to make sure that everybody is that nobody gets left behind. The initial classes are going to be like, this is how you do these, basic and important critical things like read a draft. All right. And and it's not the bamboo, BAMBU. It's 16 to 100% bamboo from Maurice Broussard. I sell it in the shop, and I'm sure other retailers sell it too. And now that I've used it, I can highly recommend. I wish that I had that little sample so I could wave it at you, because even in the little 7-inch sample, it feels and looks delicious. This is not me making a cup of tea. This is me wibbling my very swoopy sample, which is invisible, but feels nice. Okay, any more questions, folks? Thanks, Sandra. I will pass that on to Mom. All right. In the absence of questions at this moment, I am going to go on to my what is my stand-in for a book report and show you something else, which I had posted some pictures about and talked a little bit about on my Facebook page and maybe even on Instagram. But I haven't shared the full story yet. So I'm calling this a tool tip. And it's about cleaning your reeds, and then also, not your reeds, sorry, your heddle bars. So that if you have metal heddle bars and metal heddles, they slide on them very nicely. And a trick that an idea I had about how to mark your heddles so they're easy to count without permanently marking anything. I see all the time on Facebook and other places people talking about dyeing or fingernail polish or Sharpie pen or something coloring their textile heddles so they can tell which shaft the heddles are on. And I certainly understand the reason for it. And if you never move your heddles between shafts, then it makes good sense. But I move my heddles between shafts, well, not all the time, but often enough that I don't want to permanently mark my heddles with a color that means they have to go on shaft X and not be able to put them on shaft Y or get confused because now the colors don't make sense anymore. And I've done things like when I first put textile heddles on an old loom, I cut them apart in bunches of 10 so I could easily count the bunches of 10, but that only lasted as long as the warps I put on had the threads evenly distributed like sequentially on the shafts and not 24 ends on shafts 1, 2, 3, and then nothing on 5 or 6, right? Didn't work that way. So first, what I did on my vacation, or how I cleaned my heddles. No, not my heddles. I keep saying the wrong words. Nouns are very difficult today. Heddle bars. So I took them off because, and I had noticed that the heddles weren't moving very easily. And I had this idea, vague recollection that they used to move more easily. So I thought maybe it's time. I had to move heddles anyway for that overshot pattern double weave. So I thought maybe it's time I take the bars off and just look and see what's going on. And sure enough, look, rusty. So I used just this steel woolly thing without, it's not one of the ones with the detergent in it, steel wool thing from the kitchen sink, and some Minwax, paste wax. And I used the steel wool to scrape all the crusty bits off, and the Minwax to shine them up. So you wipe it on, and then after a little bit of time, you wipe it off again, or else I think it might get kind of gummy on there. And I used those same little heddle bar clips that I have on my heddle bars anyway, to keep the heddles from coming off the heddle bars while I was doing this, because I didn't want to have to re-jig them all. And this is actually a good, can I zoom in on this? Yeah, if you happen to have flat steel heddles or any other kind of metal heddles that are designed so that they have a flat and then a wiggle and a flat and a wiggle. So one heddle is flat and the next one has a wiggle, and then one heddle is flat and the next one has a wiggle. It is certainly worth your time and effort to make sure that they are hung on your loom, alternating flat wiggle, flat wiggle, flat wiggle, or zigzag or ziggle or whatever you want to call it on your loom. Because do you see how these are paired up? Here, they look like they're in little pairs. You can really see it over here on the right. And that is happening because of this arrangement of flat wiggle. So I highly encourage you to take the time to do it. You can't see the other end in this picture, no. But the other end of the heddles have a different shape. And that is by making sure you have the same shape on the same, pointing the same direction, so that none of your heddles are like flipped upside down compared to the others. You can ensure that all of your heddles are hung for right-handed threaders or left-handed threaders as appropriate. It's not very comfortable to thread through left-handed leaning heddles if you are right-handed, or through right-handed leaning heddles if you are left-handed. But it's worst of all to try to thread if you have them mixed up together on your loom. So absolutely worth your time to straighten all that stuff out if that is not the case currently on your loom. That's just more of the same. Oh, and this is how slidey they were after I was done. Rather than having to like push the chunks along, which is what I was having to do, which was a painful thing. And the reason I love this is because I find it much easier to I just tap with my threading hook, and the next heddle from the bunch will slide over into position where I need to thread. So when they're slidey, life is good. And so here's the thing that I did that I feel I was keeping it under my hat at first, because I was afraid that I would get to the loom and start weaving and realize that it was a terrible idea. So, and I didn't want to give anybody, I didn't want the terrible idea to spread. But now I know it's not a terrible idea, so it's fine if it spreads. So what I did was to put between every 10 heddles on the heddle bar a little paper clip that I had doctored in a special way. You don't have to doctor the paper clip, but if you doctor it, it goes on much easier and it's less fiddly and it doesn't get stretched open so that it takes up more space or has more potential of getting hooked up on things. My concern was that putting paper clips on my heddle bar that the paper clips would hook over the tops of the heddles, which does happen to some extent, but doesn't make any difference. It doesn't hurt a thing if it does. Or that they would hook to the tops of the heddles on a neighboring shaft, and that would be a big problem. But it didn't happen. I wove all of that overshot pattern double weave, and it didn't happen. So there again is how the paper clips are on the heddle bar. And this is how I doctored them. So, a paper clip usually has 2 curves at the top and 1 at the bottom. I cut off the inside curve, and I also cut off the little tip, a little bit of the end of this outside tip, so that it was easy to slip the paper clip onto the heddle bar without having to stretch it open. When this is longer, I don't remember exactly, I can't articulate exactly why this is an improvement, but it was. And it was only a couple of millimeters that I cut off the end. And then this, the inside trombone, if you will. And now you can see here, there they are on shaft 1. You can see some of them back there on shaft 2. So now it's super easy for me to count how many heddles are on the shaft, how many heddles I have left. And I tell you, I was glad that I had done it, because I had to move the heddles around between these shafts for the overshot pattern double weave. That's such a mouthful, because I didn't have enough. And I was worried, even as I was weaving or threading, that maybe somehow I had miscalculated and I was going to get to the end and have run out of heddles, but I could easily count them. I could just count these paper clips. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's 70 heddles. Bam. And know that I was not going to run out of heddles. So it saved me quite a bit of anxiety. And it did not cost me any trouble at all. And I don't know why this is in that album, because that's the overshot pattern double weave getting threaded, but there are no paper clips there. I guess it's just because it's so slidey. Okay, that is enough of that tooltip. It worked really well. And this is in response to Anne's comment in the chat. It worked really well. I'm really chuffed about it. And the best thing is that if I need to move the heddles around or the paper clips get out of order or something, I just get a pair of wire clippers and go tick, and cut out the paper clip, because it's a paper clip. It's not valuable. And it's easy to get a whole lot more. So, there's no downside to just having it toss it. Oh, shoot, I apparently did not, I don't know why there are anonymous questions. That should not have been the thing. But there, I've turned that off. Anyway, somebody asked, and I don't know who, what the difference is between the Academy and Jane Stafford's online guild. And there are many differences. And Tien is our marketing person. She could tell you lots and lots about it. But for me, the important differences are that it's interactive. It's not, yes, the courses are pre-recorded and pre-written, but Tien and I and any other teachers will be there and interacting with webinars and through forums. So you ask a question in a forum, we respond. And it will have a really busy, we hope, community. So when Tien and I have done the weave-alongs, there's like the class stuff that goes on, and that's really fun and popular. And then there's this whole social experience that happens over on Facebook. But you can't participate in that if you don't do Facebook. And we tried various things to introduce a community and communication and interaction through the teaching platform that we were on before, and none of them worked very well. They were kind of clunky. I mean, people still posted. There were hundreds of posts in the overshot classes I did, people posting their pictures and things, but it was clunky, it was awkward. So the Academy is going to have more like a Facebook experience as far as communicating with people, sharing pictures, seeing activity, having conversations, that kind of thing, but it'll all be integrated right into the classes and vice versa. So those are two really big differences. And there are lots of others. And if there's time later, and I suspect there will be, I will show you a little bit about the big project I've been working on the past couple of weeks. That is another big difference. So let me see what else is up here. Oh, good. Sharon liked this paperclip idea. Oh, hi, Barbara. I don't know if you go by Barbara or Barbara. I don't know. I didn't do some setting on the anonymous or on the question thing. So yeah, I don't know why. I mean, I know that I didn't do the setting and that's why anonymous questions happen, but I don't know how you ask a question anonymously. I have never participated in a Zoom webinar as a participant. I've only ever been one of the presenters. So I don't know what the interface looks like from the other side. All right. Any other questions? Comments? No? Okay. Well, I have one announcement, I guess you could say. One of the folks that has participated a lot in the classes and events and stuff that Tian and I have done online is, and I hope I'm saying her name right, Halina Shepko, who is a weaver of Ukrainian descent. And she sent me a link and some information about an event that WARP, which is Weave a Real Peace, is having it's an information session, but also if you want it to be a fundraiser for relief in the Ukraine. And I posted the information that Helena sent me to Patreon. And there's a link in there to go to the WARP registration page and read more about it and sign up if you want to. My understanding from reading it is that it's free to participate, but if you want to pay something, then that money will be donated to the organizations they're supporting. And it's 4 different weavers of Ukrainian weavers. Helena, I think, is the only one who's in North America. I think the others are in the Ukraine, or at least like from there. I don't know if they're there currently. So that information is there. And I also have show and tell on behalf of Wendy Pratt, who is there in the list of participants, because she used the name draft generator, which I'm pretty sure I have talked about before in previous office hours. That was my previous big project that I was working on. That was just on a lark, something to do on my own for myself, as opposed to the new one. But excuse me, I shared the link with Wendy and she used it to generate a name draft. Let's see if I do this. This is the name draft that she generated. And I can see from the name of the file that the names were Heather and Mark. I believe this is, Wendy, you correct me if I'm wrong, but is it a cousin for their anniversary? Heather and Mark's anniversary. And I'm guessing, just because this, let's see, can I zoom in on this? Oh, yes, this is Fiberworks. I can zoom in all I want. I'm guessing though could not swear to it, that the smaller bit here is Mark and the bigger bit is Heather, just based on their relative size. But it's not like it really matters. And then close the annotation, stop share. Then Wendy used that draft and threaded a warp on her brand spanking new to her. It's a Megado, right, Wendy? Not Noctado, right? It's a Megado with a million zillion shafts, and wove a. I have this. Oh, it's on one of these tabs. Where is it? Not that one. Not that one. Not those. This one. Wove a. And I zoomed. I seem to have two options: zoom entirely way in or zoom entirely way out. It's a hanging. So I don't know if you can see it, but there's a bar that goes through a pocket there at the top, and there's some fringe at the bottom. It's a hanging for their anniversary, which I thought was really sweet. And she used the name draft as the threading, but it looks like she turned maybe doubled the size of both the blocks. Like I think that's one Mark, and here's two Heathers, and here's two Marks and two Heathers, so to speak. And then just use the name draft threading as a theme to riff on, and treadled it other ways. I didn't mean threading, I meant treadling, because it's not treadled as drawn in, but it's still quite lovely. So good job, Wendy. And as far as I know, first actual use of a draft generated from my name draft generator. Sister. Oh, it was Wendy's sister. Oh, sorry. Although, yeah, should have remembered that. Okay, so that's all of my news and all of my show and tell. So who's got questions? Is everybody enjoying their spring? Is it spring where you are? It is not currently snowing here, but it was earlier. Oh, look, I've gone fuzzy again. There we go. Yeah. Well, Wendy, you're only, what, 3 hours away from me. So I guess if it's snowing there, it will be snowing here shortly, or the other way around. Maybe you've got the snow that I had a little while ago. 66 degrees in the greater Seattle area. 66 Fahrenheit is like mid-teens, which doesn't sound at all bad. Pat asks, when you are doing the overshot, are there standard transitions between the design motifs? Well, motifs usually in overshot are not that isolated, so that there are transitions between them. The transitions themselves become part of the motifs. So if you put a rose right next to a star, then in between them, you'll get a certain kind of shape, but it just looks like part of the motif, because that is how we understand the motifs. No motif is independent of the transitions around it. Is that making any sense? Having said that, no, there isn't. It's not like there has to be a certain thing between a rose and a star. I don't think anybody would say, well, between a rose and a star, you clearly have to put a diamond, or you have to put a this, or you have to put a that, or just a straight run of an angle, because you can put anything in there and then it just becomes a new motif. Am I answering your question? Did I understand your question and then answer it? Or am I just not clarifying that? I mean, that when you put two motifs next to each other, whatever those two motifs are, they create a transition that, yeah. Okay, so Pat follows up and says, I was trying out some different treadlings and some of them look better than others. Yeah, as long as you stay on the twill circle, your lines will always connect. And so it will never look wrong, but some might be more aesthetically pleasing than others. So what is aesthetically pleasing to me might not be to you or Wendy Pratt, right? So there aren't wrong answers. There's just whether you like it. But as you've seen, some of them will probably look better to you than others do, even though they're no more correct, in my opinion. Okay, so Pat also says, I think there were a few where I didn't follow the twill circle. Yeah, if you jump from, say, block A to block C, there's a spot where, because A and C are opposites, there's a spot where everything that was float becomes background, and everything that was background becomes float, pattern float. Whereas almost always, very commonly in overshot, there's the halftones come between pattern and background. And it looks weird to us if that's not the case. Although the current topic for my overshot study group, broken. That's exactly what broken twill is. Broken twill is twill that jumps across the twill circle. That's, yeah. Okay. The current topic for the overshot study group is finding places where the overshot was threaded on opposite blocks and where the same thing happens in the treadling. And now you got to be careful about the use of the term opposites in overshot, because it can mean, when you say treadled on opposites, what that usually means to people is that instead of having a pattern weft and a background weft, sorry, a pattern weft and a tabby background ground weft that alternate, and the pattern is in the twill sheds and the background is in the plain weave sheds, and they're kind of doing their thing independently of one another. The tabby doesn't care what the twill is doing, it's just going to do tabby, and the pattern just figures the tabby will take care of itself. Another option for treadling on an overshot threading, which is just a twill threading, it's an option for treadling on all kinds of threadings, is what's called treadling on opposites, where one pattern weft goes through a pattern shed and the next pattern weft, no background weft, tabby weft, none of that. The next pattern weft goes through the opposite pattern shed. So if the pattern weft, I think of them as the leader and the follower. If the leader weft goes through block A, the shed for block A, so shafts 1 and 2 are down and 3 and 4 are up, then the follower would go through the shed for block C with 1 and 2 up and 3 and 4 down, so that their interlacement is exactly the opposite of one another. And what tends to happen if the set and the stars all align is that they squish right down into each other and create one solid line where the color changes from the leader to the follower to the leader to the follower. And so the warp is nearly completely covered, as long as there aren't a lot of halftone areas. And there's no tabby at all. So anyway, that is treadling on opposites. Threading on opposites, and therefore weaving the blocks as threaded on opposites, means that the threading goes from a block say A, which would be threaded on 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2, and jumps immediately to being threaded on C 3 4 3 4 3 4 3 4 3 4 3 4. Now you can't avoid, as long as you follow the odd even rule, you can't avoid one little bit of 2 where block A ends, 3 where block C starts. That little 2 3 is a tiny little bit of block B, but it's 2 warp ends, and if those big blocks, or if those other blocks are big, you don't see them. And often that one little, that would be one pattern shot on D, looks weird. Fiberworks, when you say weave as drawn in overshot style, will always put in those 1 picks on that intermediate block. But often they're not supposed to be there. And if you leave that 1 pick out, you have an area where you have background right next to pattern. And where you see that often is at the center of a blooming leaf, actually. The blooming leaf picture I have available to show you is not overshot at all. It's double weave, so it doesn't do any good. But if you get out Marguerite Davison or one of your other overshot books and you open it up to a blooming leaf and you look carefully at the center square of a blooming leaf, a lot of the time there are no halftones around it. And if you go through Davison or some of the other books, you will, looking for this, you'll find some drafts where when there's a table, and a table, you know, is like 2 alternating blocks in kind of a grid. And because of the, you know, characteristics of overshot, those usually go pattern, halftone, pattern, halftone, pattern, halftone, pattern, halftone, because usually pattern is always flanked by halftone and background is always flanked by halftone. And halftone is the intermediary between pattern and background. You can set things up so that there aren't halftones in the tables. So then you get solid pattern next to solid background, and it looks like monk's belt in that little area. But what happens, this is very interesting to me anyway, what happens is that the halftones are not just gone, they get moved. They are someplace else, which logically doesn't make sense to my head. But I think it's just that in order to weave pattern background there, it means you're breaking the rules other places. And so the halftones look really different and sort of odd in those drafts. I will see if I can find an example of that at a pause. So I don't remember how I got on this topic. I guess, oh, well, because opposites. So that's what happened, Pat. You treadled a little bit, a block followed by its opposite. And it does look odd. It's not what we expect from an overshot cloth. Nothing wrong with it. The cloth is still functional. Coverlet will still keep you warm in bed at night, but it does look different than we expect. And when used judiciously, it can really enhance design. But when overused, it just kind of makes things look jumbly. Anne has asked if my name draft generator is available in public yet. It is, yes, though I haven't mentioned it to many people because I don't know whether it's going to stay there or it might move or I might have to take it down or I don't know what's going to happen to it. So I don't want, like if I wind up taking it down or moving it someplace else, I don't want people to get all disappointed that it's gone. But it is on my Weaving with Janet Dawson website. I don't think there's any navigation links to it. In fact, I know there aren't any navigation links to it, but it's weavingwithjanetdawson.com/name draft, I do believe. Let me see. What's happening? There we go. Oh, we don't want to go to, yep, there it is, name draft. So here it is. How to, there's no explanation for how to use it. You just kind of have to play with the buttons and see what they do. Someday I will add some explanation to it, but I'm busy in other ways these days. So it is low on my priority list. And it still only generates DTX files for Fiberworks. It does not do WIF files, but it's there and you're welcome to use it. Okay. So now Holly has asked if I can walk through the Fiberworks block substitution editing options. Why, certainly I can. With the caveat that, or the caveat that I kind of have to figure it out again every time I do it. So it's not like this is not going to be a flawless or flawless demonstration, but it might give you some ideas about what you can do. So let's see, let me move things out of the way. Let's just start with a new draft. Come on. File new. There we go. And I don't know. Let's just do like 2, 3, 3, 3, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 3, 3, 2. What the heck? Okay, and I'm gonna reverse it because I can. All right. There is a little threading. It's a profile threading because, or almost certainly a profile threading because it's got, why can't I zoom in? Fiberworks, zoom in, there we go. It's got multiple ends on the same shaft, which you can do, but usually that is an indicator of a profile threading. So then, and I'm not sure if this is something you can do in bronze or if you have to have silver before it's available. You can go to block substitution, and if you have Fiberworks, you might already be familiar with how block substitution works. You choose from a fairly lengthy list, though the length of the list depends on whether you have bronze or silver. Many different block or, I can't stretch this out either. I wish I could stretch that menu out so you could see them all. Many different block and unit weaves. And what happens with block substitution, both in Fiberworks and just if you're doing this as pen and paper, is that if you say, okay, this first thing in my threading on the bottom row, so I'm going to call that block A. And if I was going to thread this as summer and winter, well, I'd know, or I can look up in a book somewhere, that the threading for block A is 1, 2, 3, 2. So wherever I see a little square filled in on the bottom square, I'm going to read that as 1, 2, 3, 2. I think of it as like a little box. And I open up the box, and inside the box it says 1, 2, 3, 2. And the next little box is on the second row, which means block B. And if I open up the little box and summer and winter is inside, it will say 1, 2, 4, sorry, 1, 4, 2, 1, 4, 2, 4, 1, 3, 2, 3. The A box for summer and winter says 1, 3, 2, 3. The B box says 1, 4, 2, 4. The C box says 1, 5, 2, 5. So I would read this threading as 1, 3, 2, 3, 1, 4, 2, 4, 1, 5, 2, 5, 1, 5, 2, 5, 1, 5, 2, 5, 1, 4, 2, 4, 1, 3, 2, 3, etc. That's what block substitution in Fiberworks or on handweaving.net will do automatically. If I choose summer and winter from this list, and what a lot of what these options are, say for summer and winter, is not what's going to happen in the threading, but it's different options for the treadling. So if I choose that one, for instance, that first block turned into 1323, and the second block turned into 1424, and the third block turned into 1525. And the next one was also on that third row, so it's 1525, etc. So this is that profile interpreted as summer and winter. And it's also changed the tie-up to an appropriate tie-up for summer and winter. I had not put in a treadling, so it hasn't done anything with the treadling. And I can instead say, do one of these other structures. And the same kind of thing will happen, except that the rule for what is inside the box when you look will be different. If it's turn twill, if it's a 4 and turn twill, block A is going to say 1, 2, 3, 4. And block B is going to say 5, 6, 7, 8. And block C is going to say 9, 10, 11, 12. And then there's 3 of those in a row, so it'll go 9, 10, 11, 12, 9, 10, 11, 12, 9, 10, 11, 12, etc. So what Holly is asking about is what the editing, the block editor, block substitution editor does in Fiberworks. And I don't know, I think that this is not in bronze, but in silver, or the silver demo, you can choose blank at the top of the list of the structures. And when you hit apply, no, you hit edit blocks, it gives you a blank. In fact, actually, before we do that, let's see if I go to summer and winter, and edit blocks. Yes, look at that. Now this is super tiny, and I don't think I can make it any bigger. No, I cannot. But it's got here, it shows me this first set of columns are block A, and it says block A is 1, 3, 2, 3. And the second set of columns is block B, and it says block B is 1, 4, 2, 4. And the third set of columns is block D, 1, 5, 2, 5, sorry, C, and the next set is D, 1, 6, 2, 6, etc. So these threading blocks over here, Holly, it says the ends per unit is 4. Well, 1, 3, 2, 3, that's 4 ends. If I increase it and apply, everything gets wider by 1 end, now 2 ends per threading unit. Or I can go back down and apply. The advance is if you tell it to automatically generate the next few blocks, it's like an advancing twill. If you said that your twill goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and you tell it to repeat, but with an advancing repeat by 1 shaft, then your 1, 2, 3, 4 becomes 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 4, 5, 6, 7, etc. That's what this advance will do too. It will take whatever you have set as block A and move it to block B, but advance it, and then copy it to block C, but advance it, and copy it to D, but advance it. The ties refer to which shafts, how many of the shafts are your round shafts or your tie down shafts, i.e. the ones that don't advance. So in summer and winter, it always goes 1 pattern to same pattern, 1 pattern to same pattern. So whether you're in block A or block B or block C or D, it's 1 something to that something. And 1 and 2 don't advance. They stay on 1 and 2. So this has got 2 ties, meaning it's on 2 shafts. I'm pretty sure that's what that means. Double unit, I'm going to guess, means just make it twice as wide. Yep, look at that. It did. Okay, now the treadling blocks, oh, and the max shaft is how many shafts you're going to go up to. So if I increase this to 12, say, and I hit apply, now it's going to do this advance. It's going to leave whatever was on shafts 1 and 2, which are the tie shafts. It's going to leave that alone. So when it copies to the new block, 1 and 2 will stay exactly as they are, and everything from shaft 3 and up will advance by 1, because that's what it says here in the advance field. And it didn't go anywhere, so what do I know? Why didn't it advance? Apply. Maybe because I only have 4 blocks in the threading. As I said, I have not really experimented with this with an idea to explain to somebody else how it works. I usually just kind of mess around and see what the implications of what changes I make are. The treadling blocks information is the same basically. How many treadles, how many shafts. The ground treadles are analogous to the tie down shafts. The advance is the same. Normally in summer and winter, your tabby is over on A and B, which we usually tie up to the first 2 treadles on the left, and then calling those A and B and starting with 1 is the first pattern treadle. A typical summer and winter treadling might go 1, 2, 2, 1, 1, 2, 2, 1, 1, 2, 2, 1. And then if you advance that, you don't just advance by 1 treadle to 2, 3, 3, 2. You have to go a whole pair of treadles to 3, 4, 4, 3. That's why the advance for summer and winter is 2 rather than 1. Sorry, just had a brain fart because my eyes had noticed that this says pick spring unit 2 when summer winter is usually 4. So I don't know what's up with that. And maybe it's just because, again, I didn't put a treadling in. And so it didn't put a real value in there. The common threads, incidentals, and balanced, I don't know what that's about. I've never played with them. And I've never even noticed these 2 little buttons. I have no idea what that is. Oh, look at that. It's zoom in and out. Look. Oh, but I can't zoom very far in. Those are so tiny. Are those magnifying glasses? I need my own magnifying glasses. Oh my God, they are. They're a little plus and minus magnifying glass. So, incidentals, does that do me anything? Set up blocks dialog. Oh, look at that. The manual, the help manual for Fiberworks is really good. I don't know if you can see this because it popped up in a new window and I didn't share everything. I just shared this one window. So maybe this is not in, might not be visible to you, but when I clicked on this little question mark and then I clicked down here somewhere and it's got all kinds of just explanation about the setup blocks dialog, which is where I am. All right. Now, Holly, was that helpful? Did it answer your immediate questions? Do you have any other immediate questions? All of you people in your lovely warm weather, looking in the chat now, lilacs. We have some crocuses because they'll come up in the snow. On the other hand, I don't have to do any yard work. Oh, good. I'm glad it was helpful. All right. Anybody else have a Fiberworks question or any other kinds of, my glasses are wobbly. Any other kinds of questions? All right, well, since there's still a little bit of time, maybe I'll show you a little of what I have been working on for the Academy. Let me close this. Cancel. And I should say that the focus of the Academy is obviously teaching and community, But part of it is tools, creating tools that will be of use to people. Like the name draft generator is an example of a tool. It's not a tool that I built for the Academy, but still a tool. That's the kind of thing I mean. Calculators, that sort of stuff. I had made the set calculators and stuff like that for my website. And some kind of rudimentary project planning tools. So one of the things that I am particularly eager for the Academy to have is a tool to help you decide on sets. We've got the master yarn chart, and the master yarn chart is great, but it is static. It doesn't change with new information. And it's not, it's a good place to start in the absence of any experience, but I have found that experience often tells me that I like sets a little bit different from what is on the master yarn chart. For instance, if I'm weaving twill out of 8-2 cotton, I like it much better at 22 ends per inch than I do at 24 ends per inch. And I suspect that what's going on is, why it says, I'm just being distracted by this funny little thing in my glasses. Let me just take my glasses. There we go. That in order to have the sets in the master yarn chart, I believe, are really just a sort of database of the sets that have been used in projects in the magazine. And in order for a project to be in the magazine, it needs to be something that is not, that's within reach of many people to weave. So I suspect that they're not crazy about having bizarre and unusual sets or requiring people to have bizarre or unusual reads. So to tell somebody in Handwoven magazine, you need to set your what's-a-majigger at 22 ends per inch when nobody's got an 11 dent read except for me, means that people will read it and say, oh, well, I don't have that read and that's going to be difficult and denting will be difficult and I just won't do that project. So my guess, based on nothing but my own supposition, so don't go like criticizing anybody based on my supposition or telling people that that's how things are. But my guess is that they prefer to have the projects in Handwoven be a fairly standard sets using fairly standard reads like a 10 dent read and a 12 dent read and an 8 dent read. And if you want to use a different dent read, then they might choose a different project. Right? Because they've got to have the things in the magazines be appealing to their customers. Anyway, what I would like is to have a more robust and adaptive database for figuring out what sets should be. And we've got, so like on Ravelry, if you're a knitter and you know Ravelry, you can look and see what have other people used some yarn, what size needles do they use when they weave with that, knit with that yarn, and what cloth did they get using those needles. Because like if I take a sock yarn and I want to make a shawl out of it, well, then I'm going to I'll probably use a 4 millimeter needle. But if I want to make socks out of it, I'll make a 2¼ millimeter needle, which is sort of analogous to taking 8-2 cotton and using it for lace versus twill, right? Gauge, set, all that. And I thought to myself, well, if we have a system where people can record their weaving projects and they record what set they used, what fibers they used, what yarns they used, and whether or not, what the qualities of the fabric were and whether or not they were happy with it. Because, say I used 8-2 cotton at 40 EPI, well, that shouldn't go in an aggregate number if I hated it, right? and at 40 API, 8-2 cotton is going to be really, really stiff, depending on the structure. The master yarn chart only tells you about lace and plain weave and twill, which we assume means a 2-2 twill or a twill with fairly short floats. That same set is not going to work great for a twill that has 8 or 10 end floats, because the fiber is fine. So if we had a project repository similar to what Ravelry has for knitters, and we set the databases up in such a way and the queries up in such a way that people could input the information, then when you got to a project planner and said, okay, project planning wizard, I want to use this yarn from my stash. Give me a drop-down menu of what's in my stash. Let me choose the yarn. And now I get to say, okay, I'm going to weave twill, and I'd like it to be firm because I'm going to make like a pillow cover, for instance. What set should I use, please? Button. And it goes and looks stuff up and says, well, people who were happy with their cloth when using 8-2 cotton to weave a firm fabric used an average set of blah, 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 blah. Doesn't that sound amazing? Maybe, I don't know, it makes me excited. I get excited about it. So that's basically what I'm building, which means you have to be able to put in your stash. And anybody who has used Ravelry to try to input weaving yarns knows that it is well set up for knitting yarns, not for weaving yarns. Or if you've used Ravelry to try to record the project that you've woven, you can kind of make it work better now than it used to be since they've implemented some weaving stuff, but it's still not ideal. So I am working on a way to input your projects and a way to input your stash and then share them with other people like you can on Ravelry, and then use that information for data mining to generate recommended sets or other things. Show me, please, database, what projects were woven with 8-2 cotton set at 22. Show me what, oh, and how about this? You're using the project planning wizard. I'm going to do this twill thing and this and that, and that, and that. Okay, this is my idea. Boop. And it'll say, wait, you don't have enough yarn for that. Your stash does not have enough yarn. You don't have enough of the 10-2 black for your project. You will need to go buy another 8 ounces or this many yards in order to accomplish your project. Print that out and go to the yarn store. So what this has required is that I learn some PHP and some JavaScript, but mostly that I refresh my very, very stale and incredibly outdated SQL and set the thing up. So, I mean, here, let's see if I can, I don't know if this part will be, well, this is the part that is super interesting, one of the parts that's super interesting to me, because I like the whole back end stuff. Share this. So here are the databases so far. Yarn manufacturers, loom manufacturers, fibers with wet finishing stuff, so that I can look at, say, here is the 8-2 bamboo in my stash. And this is not a real interactive thing. I just made up a chart and I filled in the numbers that I knew should be there. But I'm getting closer and closer to the database being able to put this information into the chart. So, but the idea is, here's the 8-2 bamboo cotton in my stash. These are the specs about 8-2 bamboo. These are the colors I have in my stash, how much of them I have, how much that is in pounds and yards and kilograms and meters. This is what I've used it in other projects. Was it warp or was it weft? Yes. And here's what finishing instructions for bamboo. And here's the information about bamboo in general, or here's what other people have used 8-2 bamboo in. Let's see what other pages I have here. Here's the page I've been working on most recently. This is what it might look like. I haven't decided if this is what it's really going to look like, to list off the yarns in your stash. Here's the list, and then like here's Broussard 8-2 unmercerized cotton. And if I expand it, well, these are all the colors that I have in that yarn, how much I have, quantities, etc. And whether how much I like it or what the average rating is for me or for, yeah, I don't know, I'm figuring that stuff out, making it up as I go, really. And here's how you would edit the information when you're putting it in or updating the yarns in your stash, because it's got to be really easy to enter the information or to modify the information, or nobody's going to use it. It's got to look attractive and be simple and straightforward to do. And it's got to be able to work in either imperial or metric. So as you can see, I've got, I don't know, 25, 30 different databases, tables in my database that all interact together in order to do the thing. And they don't do the thing yet, but because I don't know how to make the website, I know how to say, okay, this is what the web page should look like, but I don't know how to make a web page that looks like that or make it do the thing when you put the information in the field. But the guys that are developing our website for the Academy do. They just don't know what the logic should be when you put a piece of information in the field. So I'm designing the database and I'm designing the interface, and they are going to make it go. I hope, knock on wood. Fingers crossed. So that is what I have spent. Yes, Holly, search on structure, yes. Yeah. And so this is why it's gotten super complicated. Bear with me if you're not into logic and algorithms and stuff, but at first it was like, okay, so here's my warp. Easy enough to say, my warp is this many ends and it's this wide, therefore it's that many ends per inch or ends per centimeter. Except what's to stop me from cutting off in the middle of the warp and reslaying at a different number of ends per inch? And what if I weave something like the sample runner from overshot departures, and every 6 inches I change to a different structure, and it's got a different weft and a different number of picks per inch. And okay, if I haven't cut off and reslayed in between, then the ends per inch haven't changed, but the picks per inch are changing all the time. How do you categorize that thing? And how do you get at useful data as far as sets go in that case? So I've had to figure out, I can't just do, here's my project, and I can't even just do, here's my warp. I have to do, here's each section of my warp. And every section of my warp has to have the same warp threads, but it doesn't have to have the same set, and it doesn't have to have the same weft, and it doesn't have to have the same hand. And oh, the other thing that in addition to the set is how much does stuff shrink when you take it off the loom and wash it? The dimensional loss. How do you predict dimensional loss? Well, if we all input our information, we can mine that data and find out, okay, well, when people usually use 8-2 cotton in plain weave at 22 ends per inch, how much width do they lose? How much length do they lose? how big should I make the thing? The data is all there as long as you set up the databases correctly to store it, and therefore you can use it if it's set up properly to get the legitimate information out. Anyway, that's what I've been working on. And I have let's see, oh, I don't have it, but I have worked on it about, oh, I don't know, 10 to 15 hours a day for more than a week. And in the same amount of time, I've slept about 3 hours a day. So I'm a little tired. But I'm also really excited. Anne asks, would you be able to sort your stash by yards per pound or fiber content? Yeah, sure. You're certainly going to be able to filter it. So say, show me everything between 3,000 and 3,500 yards per pound, which would be the 8-2 cottons and anything close to it. I assume in some of the representations, this is a very good point. I'm going to write this down. It's not like your stash has an order, right? But you'd be able to say, just like with any SQL query, give me all this information and order it by yards per pound, or give me all this information and order it by the color alphabetically. Why that would be useful, I'm not sure, but it's a thing you could do. Fix my camera again. Show me all the 8-2 cotton in my stash, whether it came from Broussard or from UKI or from some other place. Tell me what the sets are only for Broussard cotton or whatever. Yes, so I'm going to write down sorting, but the goal is to have it be as easy as possible to get useful information out. So as you could see in this this field here, say, is this the one I want? Yeah, this one. This is just a table. There's no reason why I can't, well, I mean, I can certainly tell, and I will now tell the developers that I want people to be able to click on the column labels to sort on that column up or down. And there also needs to be restrictions so that you don't, like if you've got 60 different colors of 8-2 cotton, you don't see everything. You know, just show me anything that I have at least one spool of. Show me anything that I have less than half a spool of, because that's what I should be using up in a mixed warp or something. So that isn't, it's not at all what we started out imagining that the Academy would be about, but it is certainly one thing that will set us apart from other online schools. I just really, really, really hope that I'm able to follow through, because it's a tall order, but it's coming together. And I can run a query. Those rows in that last page I showed you, those actually are generated out of my the database from a query, not just me typing information into a chart. So I'm sure that we'll be able to do the like stash recording stuff. It's the rest of it, you know, how well can we utilize the data, especially in the early days when there's not that many projects, when we don't have a whole lot of information put into the database yet. You know, how useful is it going to be? It will become more and more useful as more and more people use it. Anyway, that's what I've been working on, which is why my overshot pattern double weave is still not woven. It is still on the loom, because I've got to get this done in time for the developers to get to it in time for beta. You know, okay. It is 7:24, which is very nearly our 90 minutes. So I'm going to wrap up. Now is your last chance for any last questions this month. Let's see, this is April. So our next office hours will be on what, May something. May 15th. Which is only 3 weeks away because they were late this month. So, question. Oh, you too, Pat. And if you have any ideas, recommendations, requests for this project, feel free to send them to me via Patreon or post in Patreon. I would love to hear, because there's no point building a big, complicated system if it isn't one people are going to use or find useful. So that sorting stash thing, that hadn't occurred to me. All right. Thanks for coming, everybody. I will see you on May 15th. And hopefully Mom will be back with us by then. She says she should be driving in 4 weeks. So if she can drive, she can presumably sit at her computer. Though it's a long time to sit still if sitting still is a problem. Maybe she can come for a short stretch or something. All right. Bye, everybody. Have a lovely rest of your April and beginning of May. Happy weaving. I hope you have fun things on your looms.